Hi, this is Carl, and this special video is about replacing a small little bitty fan on an electronic appliance. So make sure you stay till the end because I want to have a special note about the particular power supply that comes with this. So if you're intending to like play around with electronics, the power supply end note is worth waiting for. In this video, we're going to be looking at fixing a very simple appliance which has what I believe to be a very simple problem. So here's the unit. This is a USB port replicator. Basically, it's got a whole bunch of USB ports and it's got two inputs. So let's say that you get two computers and you want to use all of your USB appliances on either computer A or computer B. You flip the switch and instead of being on one computer, it all works on the other. Very straightforward, very simple. Complaint from the owner is that it makes a lot of noise and it's too much noise for his office. My suspicion is it's the fan making all the noise. I did give him the advice. He took compressed air and emptied a can of compressed air into the fan. It helped quite a bit, but it didn't solve the problem. So we're going to plug this in and just see, is there really that much noise coming out of this fan? And if so, then we're going to look into replacing the fan. First, let's verify that the noise is obnoxious. I will say the power supply is kind of interesting. So this power supply plugs in by having two wires go into this little adapter, so you could replace it with almost anything you wanted to. You put it in. There's no on or off switch, there's just power, which you can probably hear the fan. I'll move my microphone closer just in case, but you can also hear the fan going, which is a sign that it's going to go out soon. And if it doesn't go out, it's just going to keep making more and more noise as its tiny little micro bearings begin to give it more and more trouble. Now, as you saw, it looks like it's about, I'm going to say, 1.5 inch fan. I will measure it exactly, but basically we have to take this little unit apart and see if we can replace the fan. I think it's going to be very, very straightforward. This is a perfect example of something. Let me unplug this. This is a perfect example of something where you should not be worried about opening up this device because there may be no user serviceable components, whatever, but my guess is there's plenty of user serviceable components and it's going to be very, very straightforward. Worst case scenario, you open it and you can't fix it, you can put it back together. This is exactly the kind of device designed to be fixed. It's also the kind of thing that if you end up throwing it away, this is a really cool little case that can be used for an awful lot of fun stuff. All right, so we're going to take apart a box that we've never taken apart before, so we don't know what's going on inside. What we're after is this fan right there. And so we're going to say, okay, how does this thing go together? And what we see, there's a bunch of screws on this side that hold the bracket in place, and then the bracket, and then there's a couple on towards the back, and then it's the bracket screws on that side, and that looks like it's pretty much it. So the unit is a USB port, that a little hub that'll give you 16 USB devices. I have no idea what you're going to do with that, but anyway, let's start by taking it apart. But wait, where are we going to put the screws? Well, it's very important before you start taking anything apart that you have a place to put the parts. In this case, we don't expect to have a lot of variety of parts, so we've got one tiny little container. This is literally just a piece of styrofoam packing that came with something I bought. It's got a nice little rim all the way around. You can put a bunch of stuff in there and it's not going to fall off unless you knock it off. So you'll know that everything we take apart is going to go right in there, and it'll be totally fine. Next question, as silly as it sounds, what kind of screwdriver are we going to use? Many people, and I would say most amateurs, use a screwdriver that is too small. If the screwdriver is too small, it's going to strip out the ridges that you need to use the screwdriver effectively. So when you look at a screw, and you see how the screwdriver fits in the screw, it shouldn't be something that just barely fits. You want the surface of the screwdriver to fit all the way around inside the screw. And that way it won't slip, sideways and start drilling out the screw. Now, in many cases, people will put these things together with an electronic device, an electronic screwdriver, and over torque it because they don't have a screwdriver where they can adjust the torque. So they just overdo it. That is too bad because it might make your life difficult and you may end up having to brute force something out of there. In this case, I verified that this is the good screwdriver and we're going to be just fine. Notice we uncovered one screw that was covered by the little rabbit ear. Now we know it's these two bottom screws, this is the bottom, that are actually holding the top on. Okay, we got all the screws loose. I will say this is a weird sort of sprung top. I'm not sure why it was bent like that before it was put on, but it obviously was. And then we find some of the dust that got blown around inside here, but didn't get blown out of the way. There we go, there's some of that dust. There you go. Okay, so now we have it open and we can see there's the fan that we want to replace. And I do see there's two screws there, and I wanted to make sure that we got this open before we loosen that because we don't know how that's connected or whatever, and I don't want it banging around on the inside. It looks like it's very simple. So the fan has these red and black wires, that connector. It's going to pop off of that main board, and then we'll unscrew the screws from the outside. We'll be able to take a look at the fan itself. And the beautiful thing about electronics is they tell you what they are, so it makes it very easy to replace them. I will note for the record that that's a different kind of screw than the other ones we were taking out, so it's very easy to tell them apart. Once we loosen the fan, there it is. It's all very compact, and you can see the label right there. This says it is a heat dissipation specialist. Low noise. Well, that didn't work out for him. Long life. That didn't work out very well either. EL bearing, DC 5 volts, 0.14 amps. And then it's got a part number EC410H05E, which we, for the most part, don't have to worry about. What we need is to measure this and find out its exact specifications and then just find something that's going to run on 5 volts and is intended to replace this. How do we do that? Okay, so we go to the magic Google machine and we know we're looking for an Evercool EC5010 H05E. All right, so we got all kinds of things that could be it or might be related to it. I will note here is one that looks like it is a reseller of that exact part. Then we got an eBay, which is probably a used version of that part that's probably no better than the one that we're trying to replace. Aha! We found the Evercool site. Now this is in Taiwan, so it may or may not be useful, but it should give us a lot of information that we're looking for to narrow it down so we can go back to the US site. So here we find it. There is EC401050 and what we see is it's 5 volts, 0.14 amps, exactly what we're looking for. This happens to have a 5,500 RPM fan speed, and is supposedly, the specific one we're looking for is 40,000 hours of lifetime. So what we see, if you're new to this, the beginning parts, the EC and the 4010, which is probably 40 millimeters and 10 millimeters, those are that's the core part. That's the object, right? And then it's a matter of, is it a 12 volt or a 5 volt, and how many amps does it draw of current, and how many watts does it take, and so forth. So all of the other variables are basically less relevant than voltage and amperage. We want to be in the neighborhood on the amps, but we want to be right on the voltage. So we need to basically look at that. Now, if you look down here, you see this 12 volt one? All of these ends with 12 and then the BCSE, which is probably related to total life hours of, thousands of hours of usage. So all the 12 volts end with a 12. All of the 5 volts have a 5B, 5C, 5E, right? Again, I suspect that's related to lifetime. So now we know what we're looking for, that anything that begins with that 4010 and then its EC is probably Everclear or Evercool. So that's basically their name. So drop the EC and then you got 4010 and then the H0 and then 5 volt, right? So that's what we're looking for. Now that you know that, you can go to a source that you know and love, which is Amazon.com. You're probably not going to find that exact one, but if you get close, you'll know at least what you're looking for. So here is an Evercool that is the 3-pin version. Here's an Evercool that's too fat. It's 15 millimeters, right? And so we're looking 25 millimeters. We need the 40 by 10, and then we need the 5 volt. It's interesting, the exact part number isn't as useful as you would think. So we're going to get rid of Evercool, and then we're going to put, and in fact we're going to get rid of the EC, and we're going to put 5-pin, no, I'm sorry. We're going to put 2-pin 5 volt. And there we get an Anavision 2-pack 40 by 10 DC 5 volt brushless cooling fan 2-pin. This looks like it is going to be a pretty exact replacement for what we're looking for. I note that the end, it's kind of hard to tell what the electrical looks like, but it looks like it might be different than the one we have. So worst case scenario, we're going to have to switch out the end piece or solder something on or so forth. I don't think we're going to have to do that, but we'll give it a shot. So this looks like a great option, and we're going to go ahead and get one of those. Okay, so we've received the new fan, and you can see it's the same size. It's all good. Different brand, different label, all that, but it is the right fan. The big difference is, and I'll put an inset photo here, that the electric hookup, the little plug, is not exactly the same, but it looks like it's completely going to work. This is the old fan. This is the new fan. You can see that they line up very nicely. The new fan is going to fit into that space without any problem. And the only thing is, when we look at the plug adapter, because it's not exactly the same, there's two questions. First of all, will this go onto these two? And it looks like it will. So we can push it on. It's going to stay. The issue would be if the pins were too big for the holes, then we would have to take this piece off and put it onto the new device. And that would be done, show you here. What you'd have to do is to push those two little silver dots in and then slide the wires out, and then you can slide the other wires in. Or, to be honest, we could solder something to there if we wanted to. But it looks like it's going to fit, it's going to work, and there's no reason to believe it would not. So let's go ahead and plug in the power just to make sure that this thing is not going to make as much noise as it used to make. There you go. So it's running. It's delightful. It's got a little bit of a gyroscope action to it because it is, after all, a fan that was designed to be very, very fast. Here's a question for you. Which way does the fan go? This way or this way? Well, luckily, we paid some attention when we took it out, and we know that the fan is supposed to go in with the label to the outside. In other words, it is going to be blowing the heat out of the box, and so we know that the fan is going to be going this way. The old one came out that way, so the new one goes in that way, and it's all going to be fine. Now, I will note for the record, because we're going to talk about this in a minute, you see that there's a place for two different fans here. So even though the old fan was 1.4 amps, the new one is 2.0 amps. So that's the maximum draw. And so the new fan's going to draw a little bit more power, but because we have enough power for two fans, it will not overdraw from anything in this system. This is a very well-designed little box, just so you know. A note for later that this will take 12 to 24 volts input, and so it has everything it needs to make sure that this runs very efficiently. All right, let's hook her up. I will note for the record that the new fan did not come with any screws. So I've got the screws from the old fan, and it looks like they're going to fit in there without any problem at all. And they're the type that will, create their own threads as needed. Nice and snug, looks great. And we'll put the top on and we will be ready to go. So there you go. Now let me take a note and just say that this should work perfectly, and it should last a long time. And I will say, it's still it's not silent. It's not as noisy. It's not going out. It's not bad. But I think this is the most silent that this device is ever going to be. That fan is on all the time, so it doesn't shut off when, it's warm enough or cool enough or whatever. It's just going to go. So that's pretty much the quietest this is ever going to be. Now let's talk about the power supply. This device, as I mentioned, is very well designed. And how do I know that? Well, because this power supply will take 12 to 24 volts. Okay, so you could put lots of different power supplies with this device. You know, there might be something that you've got from a monitor or a laptop or something that is going to be able to put out what you need. So you're going to want to make sure that you know how many amps this draws, right? But once you figure out the amperage, and usually there's a label or something that will tell you that, then you got to find the right power supply. Now, you notice that weird green thing that they've got for the connector. Well, there's got a couple of features. First of all, it's got that weird thing on the end, but it's got the ability to unscrew these wires and put this end piece on almost any power supply that you've got. You could strip the wires back, put them in there, and screw it down. So what is this power supply that I love so much? So this has the ability to take between 100 and 240 volts, which means it'll work anywhere in the world depending on what the input is. Because it's got a very standard electrical end, you could get a pigtail that plugs in Europe, Asia, Australia, anywhere, and this device will take that current and it'll convert it. So this converts it down to what it needs to be. Now, note that the fan was 5 volts, which means that this device, it takes it and it brings it down, whether it's 12 or 24 volts, down to the 5 volts that the fan needs and down to the other voltages that the rest of the device needs. So again, this power supply is also, 50 or 60 hertz as needed. And here's the important safety tip: 3.5 amps max. So there's a lot of stuff you're not going to be able to power with this, but let me tell you, 3.5 amps is a lot for many, many electronic devices. So the reason I mentioned that this is such a delightful power supply is that it's so flexible. Anything where I need 24 volts, or if I've got a device that will take up to 24 volts or can convert a voltage down to what I need, this will pretty much do it. And I think as a part, it originally shipped without that little green end piece, and the manufacturer of this device stuck that on there. Anyway, this is the kind of thing that if you didn't need it for this device, you might keep it in the garage, because this is a power supply you are very likely to be able to reuse in the future. So one of the tips for fixing stuff is always keep your eyes out for things that will be useful in future projects. That's what I have today. Now I'm going to give this back to my friend and see if he wants to sell it on eBay, because it's as quiet as it's going to get with the brand new fan. Put all your comments and questions down below. I try to respond to everybody on everything, even the people who are, insulting or just plain stupid. And I will see you next time when we fix some other thing.